The morning started like any other December day on Earth. People went to work. Children went to school. The world moved forward as it always had, unaware that everything was about to change forever. Admiral Park Tae-sung stood on the bridge of his ship, the UESC Indomitable. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the United Earth Space Command for 30 years. He had seen many things in space, but he had never seen anything like what appeared on his screens that morning. "Sir, we have multiple contacts," said Lieutenant Han Yuna. She was young, only 28 years old, but she was one of the best officers in the fleet. Her fingers moved quickly across her console. "I count 3,000 ships. They came out of nowhere." Tae-sung felt his blood turn cold. 3,000 ships. The entire Earth fleet had only 200 vessels. They had achieved faster than light travel just 40 years ago. They were still learning, still growing, still finding their place among the stars. And now this. The alien ships were massive. Each one was black as night, shaped like long daggers pointed at Earth. They hung in space beyond the moon, blocking out the stars behind them. They were beautiful in a terrible way, like a storm cloud before it destroys everything in its path. "They are sending a message," Yuna said. Her voice was steady, but Tae-sung could see her hands shaking slightly. "Universal Translator is working on it now." The bridge went silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing. They all waited. Then the voice came through the speakers. It was cold and mechanical, without any emotion at all. "Primitive species of the third planet. Your world has been selected for integration into the Velix Dominion. You have one planetary rotation to surrender your governing bodies and military assets. Resistance will result in extinction. This is not negotiable." The message ended. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. Tae-sung took a deep breath. He had known this day might come. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. They had found the answer 40 years ago when they discovered faster than light travel and met their first alien species. Most of those species were peaceful traders. Some were curious scientists. But everyone in space knew about the Velix Dominion. The Velix were conquerors. They had built an empire across hundreds of star systems. They had enslaved dozens of species. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they did not need. And now they wanted Earth. "Get me a line to UEC Command," Tae-sung ordered. "And someone contact Director Park. She needs to know about this." On Earth, in the city of Seoul, Director Park Ji-soo was already awake. She was 63 years old, with white hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen too many secrets. She was the head of the United Earth Science Consortium, the organization responsible for humanity's greatest scientific achievements. But her greatest secret had nothing to do with human science. She sat in her office, staring at a file on her computer screen. The file was classified at the highest level. Only 7 people on Earth knew it existed. The file was called Project Genesis. 70 years ago, a team of scientists had been studying the ice in Antarctica. They were looking for ancient bacteria, old climate data, boring things that only scientists cared about. What they found instead changed everything. 3 kilometers beneath the ice, they discovered a structure. It was not natural. It was not made by humans. It was not made by any species that existed in the known galaxy. The materials it was built from did not exist on any periodic table. When they tried to determine its age, their instruments failed. The structure was too old. It predated the solar system. It predated most of the stars in the galaxy. It was older than anything should be able to be. Jisoo had spent her entire career studying this structure. She had learned its secrets slowly, piece by piece, year by year. She knew what it contained. She knew what it could do. and she knew that using it would change humanity forever. Her phone rang. She answered it before the first ring finished. "I know," she said. "I have already seen the reports. How long do we have?" 22 hours if they keep their word," the voice on the other end replied. It was General Choi Do-han, the head of Earth's military forces. "Our fleet cannot stop them. We need another option." Jisoo closed her eyes. She thought about all the years of research, all the warnings in the ancient texts they had translated, all the risks they had calculated and recalculated 1,000 times. "Authorized Genesis," she said. "Full activation." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure? We do not fully understand what it will do." The risks of doing nothing are extinction," Jisoo interrupted. "We have no choice. Begin the activation sequence." She ended the call and leaned back in her chair. Through her window, she could see the Seoul skyline, millions of lights shining in the darkness. Somewhere up there, beyond the sky, 3,000 alien warships were preparing to destroy everything she loved. But humanity had a secret older than the galaxy itself. Back in space, Admiral Tae-soon watched the tactical display with growing dread. The Velix fleet had begun to move. They were not waiting for their deadline. They were sending their first attack wave early, testing Earth's defenses. "All ships, battle stations," Tae-soon commanded. His voice was calm, even though his heart was pounding. "We will not surrender. We will not run. We will fight for our home." The first Velix weapons fired. Beams of purple energy crossed the darkness of space, slamming into Earth's orbital defense platforms. Explosions bloomed like flowers of fire and death. Lieutenant Yuna reported the damage with a voice that grew more desperate with each word. "Platform 7 is gone. Platform 12 is gone. The Moscow is taking heavy fire. The Beijing has lost shields." Tae-soon watched his people die. He watched humanity's small fleet throw itself against an enemy they could not defeat. He watched and he hoped that whatever Director Park was planning, she would do it soon, because they were running out of time. On Earth, people looked up at the sky. They could see the flashes of light beyond the atmosphere, the distant explosions of the battle above. News spread quickly. The aliens had come. The aliens were attacking. The world held its breath. In Seoul, Director Park Ji-soo picked up her phone one more time. She dialed a number that connected her to a facility in Antarctica, to a team of scientists who had been preparing for this moment for decades. "Dr. Kwon," she said when the call connected. "It is time. Wake it up." On the other end of the line, Dr. Kwon Hyun looked at the ancient structure around him. The walls glowed with a soft golden light, as if the building itself was alive and waiting. "Understood," he said. "Beginning activation now." He walked toward the center of the structure, toward a small cube that sat on a pedestal of black stone. The cube was simple, unremarkable, just a few inches on each side. But it contained something that could save humanity or destroy it. Hyun reached out his hand. Above Earth, the battle raged. Ships exploded. People died. The Velix advanced. Hyun's fingers touched the cube, and the universe changed forever. Dr. Kwon Hyun was not a soldier. He was a scientist, a man who had spent his entire life asking questions and searching for answers. He was 45 years old, with messy black hair and glasses that were always slightly crooked. He had never fired a weapon. He had never been in a fight. But today, he was humanity's last hope. The Antarctic facility was buried deep beneath the ice. It had taken 20 years to build, all in secret, all hidden from the rest of the world. Only a handful of people knew it existed. Only a handful of people knew what it protected. Hyam walked through the ancient corridors with his team behind him. There were 20 scientists in total, the brightest minds on Earth. They carried equipment and computers, but all of them knew that their human technology was nothing compared to what surrounded them. The walls of this structure were made of a material that looked like metal, but behaved like crystal. It was warm to the touch, even though the temperature outside was far below freezing. Strange symbols covered every surface, a language that had taken decades to partially translate. The symbols glowed with soft golden light, as if the building itself was breathing. "The Veliks have launched their main attack," said a voice in Hyan's earpiece. It was Captain Song Minji, the military officer assigned to protect the facility. "Our fleet is being destroyed. Whatever you are doing down there, you need to do it faster." Hyan did not respond. He could not think about the battle above. He could only focus on what was ahead of him, on the task that decades of work had prepared him for. The team entered the central chamber. It was a vast spherical room, so large that the ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. Crystalline structures lined the walls, each one pulsing with that same golden light. The air hummed with energy, with power that made Hyan's skin tingle. At the center of the room was a pedestal made of pure black stone. And on that pedestal sat a small cube, no larger than a child's toy. Dr. Bei Yunji, the team's expert on ancient languages, stepped forward with tears in her eyes. She had spent 30 years studying the texts they had found in this structure. She knew the story better than anyone. "The seed," she whispered, "is real. It is actually real." The seed, that was what the ancient texts called it. According to those texts, billions of years ago, before the Milky Way galaxy had even finished forming, there existed a race of beings called the Architects. They were the first intelligent life in the universe, born from the chaos of creation itself. They lived for millions of years. They built wonders that modern science could not even imagine. And then, when their time was ending, they made a choice. They decided to leave a gift for the future. The Architects knew that other species would evolve, that other civilizations would rise and fall across the cosmos. They wanted to give those future species a chance, a helping hand from the ancient past. So they created the seeds and scattered them across the universe, burying them on young planets where life might one day grow. Each seed contained the knowledge and technology of the Architects. Each seed waited for a species worthy of receiving it. Earth's seed had been waiting for 11 billion years. The translations say it bonds with a compatible species, Unji explained, her voice shaking. It reads their minds, their hearts, their potential. If it finds them worthy, it becomes theirs. Their technology, their inheritance, their gift from the Architects themselves. Hyam looked at the small cube. It seemed so simple, so ordinary, but he could feel something coming from it, a presence, a consciousness far older than anything he could comprehend. "And if it finds us unworthy?" asked Dr. Kim Sujin, the youngest member of the team. She was only 30 years old, brilliant but nervous. Yunji did not answer. The ancient texts had been unclear about that. They had described great power being given to worthy species. They had also mentioned species that had been judged and found lacking. Those species were not mentioned again. "We do not have a choice," Hyan said. He stepped toward the pedestal, his heart pounding in his chest. "Either we try or humanity dies today." Captain Minji's voice crackled in his ear again. "Dr. Kwan, the Veliks are breaking through the orbital defenses. They will begin bombing the surface in less than an hour. Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London, they are all targeted." Hyan thought about his sister in Seoul. He thought about his students at the university. He thought about the billions of people who had no idea that their fate rested on this moment, on this choice. He reached out and touched the cube. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Golden light exploded from the cube, surrounding Hyan completely. He felt himself lifted off the ground, suspended in a sea of energy that was warm and cold and everything at once. He could not move. He could not speak. He could only experience. Images flooded his mind. He saw the birth of the universe, the first stars igniting in the darkness. He saw the architects, beings of pure thought and energy, building structures that spanned entire galaxies. He saw them watching young species take their first steps, celebrating each new civilization that rose from the chaos. And he saw them choosing, evaluating, judging. The architects were wise. They knew that power without wisdom was dangerous. They knew that technology without morality was destructive. They had seen species use their gifts to conquer and enslave. They had seen species use their gifts to destroy themselves. They had learned to be careful. Now they were examining humanity. Hyan felt the presence in his mind, ancient and vast and curious. It looked through his memories. It saw human history in all its ugliness, the wars, the hatred, the cruelty that people had shown to each other. It saw the worst of humanity, but it also saw the best. It saw people sacrificing themselves to save strangers. It saw love that endured through suffering. It saw hope that survived in the darkest times. It saw humans reaching out to each other, building communities, creating art and music and beauty from nothing but their dreams. The presence paused. It considered. Outside the chamber, the other scientists watched in terror. Hyan hung suspended in the golden light, his eyes glowing, his body motionless. Minutes passed that felt like hours. Then, slowly, the light began to change. It grew brighter, warmer, more intense. A sound filled the chamber, not heard with ears, but felt with the soul. It was the sound of a decision being made. The ancient voice spoke directly into Hyan's mind. It was not words exactly, but meaning, pure and clear. We have watched your species. We have seen your darkness and your light. We have seen your capacity for destruction and your greater capacity for love. You're young. You're flawed. But you have potential. We choose you. We give you our legacy. Use it well. The light exploded outward, passing through the walls of the chamber, through the ice above, through the atmosphere of Earth itself. It shot into space like a pillar of golden fire, visible from every continent, brighter than the sun. And then, in orbit around Earth, something began to happen. The golden light touched the darkness of space and began to build. Ships materialized from nothing, constructed from energy and matter that bent the laws of physics. They were massive, beautiful, terrible designs that human minds could barely comprehend. Each one hummed with power that had been waiting for 11 billion years to be used. In the Antarctic chamber, Dr. Quan Hyan opened his eyes. But they were not the same eyes anymore. They glowed with golden light, and behind them was knowledge that spanned the age of the universe. It worked, Yunji breathed. It actually worked. Yan looked at her, and when he spoke, his voice carried echoes of something ancient and powerful. The architects have given us their gift, he said. Now we must use it to save our world. Above Earth, the Velix fleet admiral watched his sensors go crazy. Where there had been nothing, now there were ships. Hundreds of ships. Ships that should not exist, that could not exist, that defied everything he knew about physics and technology. What is happening? He demanded. What are those things? His science officer's voice came back trembling with fear. Unknown fleet admiral. The energy readings are impossible. Those ships are using technology that predates our oldest records. They are older than the galaxy itself. The admiral felt something he had never felt before in his long career of conquest. He felt afraid. Admiral Park Tae-seung had accepted that he was going to die. His ship, the Indomitable, was falling apart around him. 3 Velix warships had focused their weapons on his vessel, and no amount of human technology could withstand that kind of punishment. The bridge was filled with smoke and sparks. Half of his crew were dead or wounded. Lieutenant Han Yuna was bleeding from a cut on her forehead, but she refused to leave her station. She kept reporting the damage, kept doing her job, even though they both knew it was hopeless. "Shields are gone," Yuna said. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Life support failing in the engineering section." Taesung gripped his command chair. Through the damaged view screen, he could see the Velix fleet advancing toward Earth. They had already destroyed most of the orbital defense platforms. They were preparing for the final bombardment that would burn cities and kill billions. He had failed. They had all failed. And then the sky turned to gold. The light came from Earth below, a pillar of brilliant energy that shot up from the Antarctic and punched through the atmosphere like a spear thrown by a god. It was so bright that it blinded the sensors on every ship, both human and Velix. It was so powerful that it shook the fabric of space itself. Taesung shielded his eyes. What in the world? The light spread outward, and where it touched empty space, ships began to appear. Not human ships. Not Velix ships. Something else entirely. They were enormous. The smallest was larger than a Velix dreadnought. The largest was the size of a small moon, a vast structure of golden metal and flowing energy that seemed to sing with power. Their designs were unlike anything Taesung had ever seen, curves and angles that hurt his eyes if you looked at them too long, technologies that seemed to bend reality around them. Hundreds of these ships materialized in seconds. They formed a wall between the Velix fleet and Earth, silent and patient and absolutely terrifying. "Sir," Yuna whispered, "those ships, they are not in any database. Our sensors cannot even properly analyze them. The energy readings are off the scale." Taesung stared at the new arrivals with a mixture of hope and fear. He did not understand what was happening. He did not know if these ships were friends or just different enemies. But for the first time since the battle began, the Velix had stopped firing. In the Antarctic facility, Dr. Quan Hyan stood at the center of a hurricane of golden light. The knowledge of the architects was pouring into his mind, reorganizing his thoughts, expanding his consciousness in ways he could barely comprehend. He was still himself. He was still human. But he was also something more now. He could feel every ship in orbit around Earth. He could feel the architect vessels as if they were extensions of his own body. He could feel the fear of the Velix and the desperate hope of the human survivors. He could feel it all. "The fleet responds to you," said the ancient voice in his mind. "You are the bridge between your species and our legacy. Command them." Hyan took a deep breath. In his old life, he had been a quiet scientist who avoided conflict. He had never wanted power or authority. But now the fate of his entire species rested on his shoulders. He reached out with his mind and touched the largest of the architect ships. Its name came to him like a memory, the Inheritance. And suddenly, he was there, standing on its bridge, surrounded by systems of light and energy that awaited his commands. The bridge was not like any human design. There were no chairs, no consoles, no screens. Instead, there were streams of golden energy that flowed through the air, responding to thought alone. Hyan realized that the ship was not just a machine. It was almost alive, built with technology so advanced that the line between artificial and organic had become meaningless. "Dr. Quan, can you hear me?" The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was Captain Song Minji, back at the Antarctic facility. "I can hear you," Hyan replied. His voice echoed strangely, as if it was coming from multiple places at once. "I can hear everything." "The Velix are not attacking," Minji reported. "They have stopped. But their fleet is still there." "What do we do?" Hyan looked out at the stars through senses that were no longer limited to human eyes. He could see the Velik ships clearly now, their black hulls, their weapons still charged and ready. He could see the fear in their fleet, the confusion as they faced something they did not understand. He could destroy them. The power was there, waiting for his command. The architect weapons could tear through the Velik's fleet like paper. He could end this battle in seconds. But that was not what the architects had wanted. They gave us power, Hyan said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. But they also gave us wisdom. Power without wisdom is just destruction. He opened a channel that broadcast on every frequency, a message that every ship in the system would hear. Velik's dominion, he said. His voice was calm, but carried weight that made stars seem small. You came to Earth seeking a primitive species to conquer. You came expecting easy prey. On the Velik's command ship, Fleet Admiral Verkith listened with growing horror. He was an old warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds. He had never known fear. He was learning it now. You found something else, Hyan continued. 11 billion years ago, the architects walked among the stars. They built wonders you cannot imagine. They achieved things you cannot comprehend. And when they chose to leave this universe, they left gifts for those who would come after them. The architect fleet began to move. The ships did not use engines or thrusters. They simply flowed through space, as natural as water flowing downhill. They surrounded the Velik's formation without effort, without hurry, with the patience of something that had waited longer than the Velik species had existed. Earth was one of those gifts, Hyan said. And we are their inheritors. Verkith finally found his voice. This is impossible. Your species is barely spacefaring. You cannot possess such technology. We did not build it, Hyan admitted. We inherited it. The architects chose humanity. They looked into our hearts and found us worthy. And now their power is ours. On the damaged Indomitable, Admiral Taesung listened to the exchange with tears in his eyes. His ship was dying. Many of his people were dead. But Earth was saved. Against all odds, humanity had found a miracle. What happens now? Taesung asked no one in particular. Lieutenant Yuna looked at him, her face streaked with blood and tears. I do not know, sir. But I think everything is about to change. She was right. In the Antarctic facility, Director Park Jisoo watched the events unfold on her screens. She had known that the seed contained great power. She had not known how great. She had not known that it would make humanity the heirs of the most advanced civilization in cosmic history. My God, she whispered. What have we become? Dr. Bae Yoonji stood beside her, still shaking from everything she had witnessed. We became what the architects always hoped we could be, she said quietly. We became their children, their legacy, their hope for the future. In orbit, the standoff continued. The Velik's fleet held position, surrounded by ships they could not defeat. Hyan floated on the bridge of the inheritance, waiting, thinking, feeling the weight of responsibility that now rested on him. The architects had given humanity incredible power, but power alone meant nothing. What mattered was how they chose to use it. Hyan thought about the ancient beings who had created the seed, who had waited patiently for billions of years for a species worthy of their gift. They had been wise. They had been patient. They had believed in the potential of younger species. Now it was humanity's turn to decide what kind of inheritors they would be. Would they use this power for conquest, for revenge, for domination? Or would they use it for something better? Hyan already knew the answer. He had known it the moment the architects had looked into his heart and found him worthy. Fleet Admiral Verkith, he said, I have a message for your dominion. Listen carefully. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Fleet Admiral Verketh had conquered 37 species in his long career. He had burned cities, enslaved billions, and watched civilizations crumble before his fleet. He had never shown mercy. He had never needed to. Now he stood on his command bridge, surrounded by officers who looked at him for guidance, and he had no idea what to do. The alien ships filled every screen. They were beautiful in a way that made his heart ache, designs that seemed to flow like liquid metal, surfaces that reflected colors he had no names for. His weapons could not scratch them. His scanners could not properly read them. They existed beyond his understanding, and that terrified him more than any enemy ever had. Fleet Admiral, his second-in-command, said nervously, "The alien is still waiting for a response. What should we tell him?" Verketh looked at the main screen, where a holographic image of Dr. Quan Hyan floated. The human looked small, fragile, easily broken, but his eyes glowed with golden light, and behind those eyes was power that made the Velik's fleet look like toys. "What is your message?" Verketh asked finally. He hated how his voice sounded, how it trembled slightly. Hyan smiled. It was not a cruel smile or a mocking one. It was the smile of someone who was tired of fighting. "Your dominion has caused great suffering across the galaxy," Hyan said. "You have conquered and enslaved for centuries. You came to Earth expecting another easy victory, another species to add to your collection. We are the strongest power in the known galaxy," Verketh said, trying to sound confident. "No one has ever defeated us." "You are not the strongest anymore," Hyan replied simply. "The architects were building civilizations before your star was born. Their technology makes yours look like stone tools. I could destroy your entire fleet with a single thought." Verketh felt cold spread through his body. He knew it was true. He could see it in the way those golden ships moved, in the impossible energies they contained. One of those vessels could probably destroy his entire homeworld. "Then do it," Verketh said, surprising himself. "If you have such power, use it. That is what power is for." Hyan shook his head slowly. "No, that is what you believe power is for. That is why you conquer and enslave. But the architects did not give us this gift so we could become another version of you." On the Velik's bridge, no one moved. They all watched the exchange, waiting to see what would happen next. "I could destroy you," Hyan continued, "but I will not. Instead, I will give you something you have never received before. I will give you a choice." "A choice?" Verketh repeated, confused. "Your fleet will be disabled. Your weapons will be removed. You will return to your homeworld and tell your leaders what happened here today. And then your species will decide its own future." Hyan moved his hand, and suddenly every Velik ship shuddered. Alarms screamed across the fleet. Officers shouted in panic as their weapon systems went dark, as their engines sputtered and died. "What are you doing?" Verketh demanded. "I am taking away your ability to hurt others," Hyan said. "But I am not taking away your lives." The architects believed that every species has the potential for good. Even species that have done terrible things. Even species like yours. Verketh stared at the human. In his entire life, no one had ever shown him mercy. The concept was foreign to Velik's culture. The weak were conquered. The strong ruled. That was the natural order. But this human, with power greater than anything Verketh had ever imagined, was choosing not to use it. "Why?" Verketh asked. It was the only word he could manage. "Because destruction is easy," Hyan replied. "Building is hard." The architects understood this. They could have conquered the entire universe. Instead, they chose to create, to nurture, to help younger species find their way. That is the legacy they gave us. That is what humanity will try to become. In the Antarctic facility, Director Park Ji-soo watched the exchange with tears streaming down her face. All her life, she had wondered what would happen when the seed was activated. She had feared that such power would corrupt humanity, would turn them into monsters no different from the Velix. She had been wrong. Dr. Bae Yoonji stood beside her, equally moved. He could have destroyed them, she whispered. He had every right. They came to enslave us, to kill us. But he chose not to, Ji-soo said. He chose something better. Back in orbit, Hyan addressed the entire Velix fleet one more time. His voice was gentle but firm, the voice of a teacher speaking to students who had made terrible mistakes. You have 30 of your days to leave Earth's solar system. Your ships will be given enough power to return home, but nothing more. When you arrive, tell your leaders that the galaxy has changed. Tell them that humanity stands with the legacy of the architects. And tell them that we are watching. He paused, letting his words sink in. The Velix Dominion has a choice now. You can continue your path of conquest and destruction. If you do, you will face us again. And next time, we may not be so merciful. Or you can choose a different path. You can learn to live in peace with the other species of the galaxy. You can use your strength to build instead of destroy. Verkith listened in silence. His entire worldview was crumbling. Everything he had believed, everything he had been taught, suddenly seemed wrong. The architects looked at humanity and found potential for good, Hyan said. I believe the same potential exists in every species, even yours. The question is whether you will embrace it. The communication ended. The holographic image faded away. On the Indomitable, Admiral Tae-sung let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. His ship was still damaged, still dying, but suddenly none of that mattered. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. Sir, Lieutenant Yuna said, her voice filled with wonder. The architect ships are moving. They are approaching our damaged vessels. Tae-sung watched as one of the golden ships glided toward the Indomitable. It was graceful, beautiful, like a living thing made of light and metal. A beam of golden energy reached out and touched his ship. Immediately, the damage began to repair itself. Hull breaches sealed. Systems came back online. Wounded crew members felt their injuries healing. It was impossible, miraculous, and it was happening right before their eyes. They are helping us, Yuna breathed. They are saving everyone. Across the battlefield, the same thing was happening to every surviving human ship. The architect vessels moved among them like doctors among patients, healing, repairing, restoring. Not a single human life that could be saved was lost. On Earth, people watched the sky in amazement. The golden light that had erupted from Antarctica was fading now, but everyone knew that everything had changed. News spread across the planet in minutes. The aliens had attacked. Humanity had been saved. Some kind of ancient power had been awakened. In the city of Seoul, Hyan's sister stood outside her apartment building, looking up at the stars. She did not know that her brother was now connected to the most powerful technology in the universe. She only knew that the world had been saved, and that somehow, against all odds, they were going to be okay. In the Antarctic facility, Dr. Kwon Hyan returned to his body with a gasp. The connection to the inheritance faded, and he was just a man again, standing in an ancient chamber surrounded by colleagues who looked at him with a mixture of awe and fear. What happens now? Dr. Kim Soo-jin asked quietly. Hyan looked at his hands. They still glowed faintly with golden light, a reminder of what he had become. He was still human. He was still himself. But he was also something more now, a bridge between humanity and the architects, a guardian of their legacy. Now, he said slowly, we learn. The architects gave us their knowledge, but understanding it will take time, years, maybe decades. We have been given an incredible gift, and we must use it wisely. Director Park Jisoo's voice came through the communication system. Dr. Kwon, the world is going to have questions. Everyone saw what happened. They will want to know about the architects, about the technology, about what this means for humanity's future. Hyan nodded, even though she could not see him. Then we will tell them. No more secrets. No more hiding. Humanity needs to understand what we have inherited and what responsibility comes with it. He looked up at the ceiling, imagining the stars beyond, imagining the Velix fleet limping home, imagining the countless species across the galaxy who would soon learn that everything had changed. The architects believed in us, he said softly. Now we have to prove they were right. 6 months had passed since the day the sky turned gold. 6 months since humanity had been saved by technology older than the stars. 6 months since everything changed. Director Park Jisoo stood on the observation deck of humanity's first orbital city. It did not have a name yet because the committees were still arguing about what to call it. Some wanted something grand and inspiring. Others wanted something simple. Jisoo did not care about the name. She only cared about what it represented. The city floated in orbit around Earth, a massive structure of metal and glass that housed 50,000 people. Construction drones powered by architect technology worked constantly, adding new sections, new homes, new possibilities. What would have taken humanity centuries to build had been completed in months. Below, Earth turned peacefully, blue and green and beautiful. The scars of the battle were gone now, healed by the same technology that had saved them. The orbital defense platforms had been rebuilt, stronger and better. The fleet had been repaired and expanded. Humanity was no longer vulnerable. Admiral Park Tae-soon walked up beside her. He looked different now, healthier, younger somehow. The injuries he had suffered during the battle had been completely healed, along with old wounds he had carried for years. The architect technology did not just repair damage. It restored people to their best possible state. The council meeting went well, he said. 47 species have signed the Genesis Accords now. More are requesting to join every week. Jisoo nodded slowly. In the months since the battle, word had spread across the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear of the Velix dominion were reaching out to Earth, seeking protection, seeking alliance, seeking hope. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of that change. Any word from the Velix? She asked. Taesung's expression darkened slightly. Our intelligence reports suggest there is a civil war brewing on their homeworld. The old leadership wanted to rebuild their fleet and attack us again. The younger generation is pushing for reform. Dr. Kwon believes the reformers will win eventually. I always did see the best in people, Jisoo said with a small smile. Even in people who tried to destroy us. The door behind them opened, and Dr. Kwon Hyam walked in. He looked the same as he always had, messy hair and crooked glasses. But there was something in his eyes now, a depth that had not been there before. He carried the knowledge of the architects within him, 11 billion years of wisdom and experience, and yet he remained fundamentally human. Director Park, Admiral Tae-sung. He nodded to each of them. I hope I am not interrupting. Not at all, Jisoo said. We were just discussing the state of the galaxy. Join us. Hyam walked to the window and looked down at Earth. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. I spoke with the council this morning, he said finally. We have decoded another section of the architect archives. They left us more than just technology. They left us warnings. Warnings about what? Tae-sung asked. About the responsibility of power. About the dangers of thinking we are better than other species. About the temptation to become the very thing we fight against. Hyan turned to face them. The architects watched younger civilizations for millions of years. They saw empires rise and fall. They saw a species with great power use it to conquer and enslave, just like the Velix. And they saw those species eventually destroy themselves. Jisoo felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying we might make the same mistakes? I am saying we must be careful not to, Hyan replied. We have been given incredible power. The temptation to use it to impose our will on the galaxy will be strong. Some people are already calling for us to punish the Velix, to conquer their worlds, to make them pay for what they tried to do. They did try to destroy us, Taesoon pointed out. Some would say they deserve punishment. Perhaps. But the architects did not give us this gift so we could become conquerors ourselves. They gave it to us because they saw something in humanity, a capacity for compassion, for growth, for choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. Hyan smiled sadly. We have to prove that their faith was not misplaced. The three of them stood in silence for a moment, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Velix were fighting their civil war. Somewhere out there, dozens of species were hoping that humanity would protect them. Somewhere out there, the future was waiting to be written. Lieutenant Han Yuna contacted me this morning, Taesoon said, changing the subject. She completed her recovery and has been promoted to commander. She will be leading one of the new exploration vessels. Jisoo smiled. She earned it. She showed incredible courage during the battle. The architect ships allow us to explore far beyond what we could before, Hyan added. Commander Han's mission will take her to the edge of the galaxy. Who knows what she will find there? On the other side of the orbital city, Commander Han Yuna stood on the bridge of her new ship, the UESC Discovery. It was a hybrid vessel, combining human design with architect technology. The humans had insisted on keeping some familiar elements even as they embraced the new. It made the impossible feel a little more comfortable. Dr. Bae Yoonji stood beside her, having requested a transfer to the Exploration Division. She wanted to find other architect sites, other traces of that ancient civilization. She believed there were more secrets out there, waiting to be discovered. Are you ready for this? Yoonji asked. Yuna looked out at the stars. 6 months ago, she had been a simple lieutenant on a dying ship, certain that she would never see another sunrise. Now, she was commanding a vessel that could cross the galaxy, exploring regions that humans had never even dreamed of reaching. I have no idea, she admitted. But I am excited to find out. Back on Earth, in the city of Seoul, Hyan's sister Kim Murray stood outside her restaurant, watching the sky. She knew the truth now. Everyone did. Her quiet, bookish brother had become the bridge between humanity and the architects. He had saved the world. He had visited her a few weeks ago, looking tired but happy. They had eaten dinner together, talked about old memories, laughed about things that did not matter. He was still the same brother she had always known, still bad at cooking, still terrible at telling jokes. The power he carried had not changed who he was at his core. That, more than anything, gave her hope for humanity's future. In the Antarctic facility, the seed still rested on its pedestal, but it was dark now. Its purpose had been fulfilled. It had waited 11 billion years for humanity to find it, and now its gift had been given. The chamber felt peaceful, almost sacred, a monument to an ancient people who had believed in the potential of younger species. Scientists still studied the structure, still worked to understand its mysteries. They knew that they had only scratched the surface of what the architects had left behind. There would be decades, perhaps centuries, of discovery ahead. Each new piece of knowledge brought new wonders and new responsibilities. Far across the galaxy, on a ship limping home to Velix space, former Fleet Admiral Verkus sat alone in his quarters. He had been stripped of his rank, blamed for the disaster at Earth. His career was over. His reputation was destroyed. But his mind was changed. He kept thinking about the human who had spared his life. about the power that could have destroyed everything and chose not to, about mercy, a concept that had no word in the Velix language until now. Maybe the younger generation was right. Maybe there was a better way. He did not know if he could change his species. He did not know if reform was even possible after centuries of conquest and cruelty. But he knew that he had to try. The human had given him a choice, and for the first time in his life, Verkith was choosing something other than destruction. Back on the orbital city, Dr. Quanhan stood alone at the window, watching Earth turn below. He could feel the architect fleet waiting patiently in their positions around the solar system. He could feel the gentle hum of the ancient technology that now sang through his veins. The architects had believed in humanity. They had looked across billions of years of cosmic history and decided that these small, fragile, beautiful creatures were worthy of their greatest gift. Now it was up to humanity to prove them right. Hyan thought about all the challenges ahead. There would be conflicts with other species. There would be debates about how to use their new power. There would be mistakes, failures, moments when it seemed like everything was falling apart. But there would also be moments of wonder, of discovery, of connection with species they had never imagined meeting. Humanity was not alone anymore. They were part of something larger, something ancient, something that connected them to the very beginning of the universe. The door opened behind him. Director Park Jizu walked in, followed by Admiral Taesung and several other members of the council. Dr. Quan, Jisu said, "We need your input on the expansion of the Genesis Accords. Some species are requesting military protection. Others want access to architect technology. We need to decide how to proceed." Hyan turned from the window and smiled. There was work to be done. There was always work to be done. But that was okay. That was what being human meant, facing challenges, making choices, trying to build something better than what came before. "Of course," he said. "Let us begin." Outside the window, the stars shone with ancient light, carrying messages from the past and promises for the future. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe, and nothing would ever be the same again. But that was exactly as the architects had planned. The end.